My name is Miss Lizzie. I don't ever smoke the dizzy, but we can always share some disease. It's just a cup in time. This song doesn't have to run. Life's all of us, not every moment we can be feeling fine. I wanna share a moment, just a second if you will, maybe even a cup of thrill. We could share this performance. It's tea time, come sit with me.
Well, welcome guys. Miss Liz is back, and that's right. We are starting a little early tonight, but that's okay, right? Because we want to have a good, strong cup of tea. And tonight's tea in the house is Trauma Support Rebirth. That's the tea we're serving tonight with Renee Rodriguez. So sit back, grab your tea, all of that good stuff. We're going to get you guys over to Miss Liz's YouTube channel, LinkedIn, Facebook, TikTok, all those good platforms, and get a like, subscribe, follow, and share these tea times out, because I guarantee all these tea times do make a difference, one cup of tea at a time. So let's get started with the disclaimer and then an intro, and then we'll get Renee in here and we'll serve you that tea of trauma support and rebirth through the Custody Warrior Blueprint program. Disclaimer for Miss Liz's Tea Time live show. Miss Liz's Tea Time is a global platform dedicated to sharing real life stories, diverse perspectives, and meaningful conversations that inspire awareness, healing, and connection. I'm Miss Liz is going live using StreamYard. Before leaving a comment during the live broadcast, please grant StreamYard permission to display your name at StreamYard.com. Please be advised that all the content brought forward during any Tea Time show is presented in good faith. However, discussions may include opinions, beliefs, and perspectives that do not necessarily represent the views of Miss Liz or the Tea Time platform. Information shared by guests is based on their own experiences and is perceived to be accurate at the given time of airing. All guests, viewers, and participants are responsible for using their own judgment when considering any action or decision that may relate to these discussions. Some episodes may cover sensitive topics, including but not limited to trauma, abuse, grief, mental health, and other emotionally triggering subjects. Listeners' and viewers' discretion is strongly advised. Tea Time with Miss Liz is an open discussion forum designed to offer insight, inspire awareness, and create connection. It is not a substitute for professional, medical, legal, or therapeutical advice. If you require professional support, please seek assistance from qualified professionals or trusted resources in your area. If you have questions regarding this disclaimer or the content of the discussion, you are welcome to contact me, aka Miss Liz, at my email at bookingmissliz@gmail.com, or visit my link tree at Miss Liz's Tea Times. By choosing to participate in, comment on, or view these live shows, you acknowledge and accept this disclaimer. Your participation is entirely voluntary. I, Miss Liz, welcomes you to join the conversation with an open heart, and if at any time you feel this platform is not right for you, I respect your decision and wishes and welcome you back whenever you are ready. Tea Time at Miss Liz is serving truth and awareness one cup at a time. Now let me give you a little bit on Renee. Tonight I'm honored to share this space with a powerful woman who is changing lives through truth, advocacy, and education. Renee Rodriguez from the Custody Blueprint. Renee's mission was born from her own personal journey through the family court systems, one filled with lessons, heartbreak, and awakenings. Out of those experiences came a call to help others navigate one of life's most challenging paths, custody battles and co-parenting with purpose. Through the Custody Blueprint, Renee provides guidance, tools, and emotional support for parents seeking fairness, clarity, and peace, not war, in the process. She's here to shine a light on the realities of custody systems, to empower parents to rise above the pain and to bring awareness to how we can protect the well-beings of children caught in between. So grab your evening cup, open your hearts, and join me as we dive into a real, raw, hopeful conversation about healing, justice, and rewiring the narratives of family through love and awareness with Renee Rodriguez. Let me get her in here. Welcome, Renee.
Thank you. Hi.
It is an honor to have you here on my platform. So Renee, I want to get into it right away with you. Usually I ask who you were as a younger girl and who you are now, but let's get into the blueprint. I really want to get into the blueprint because I have a lot of important questions that I want to get out to you tonight. So let's get that out first. Could you tell us a little bit of how the blueprint came apart or came together?
Yeah. So when I was going through my own custody battle, there came a point in my court case where we decided that we would have to go through what's called a custody evaluation. There are a lot of different terms for that, but that's the general term for it. I was working with a divorce coach at the time, and this was so far back that she was pretty much the only one out there, Tina Swithin. And Tina was working with me, and she said, look, this is not my area. Planning for an evaluation is not something that I'm skilled in, but you have a strategy background, you have a leadership background. Why don't you just put together what it is you want to show the evaluator? Let's look over it. And so I did that, and I came back to her, and Tina said, I've never seen anything like this. The way that you put this together, these templates that you created, the abuse is so very, very clear. And so she said, well, what she said to me was, you should be a custody coach, to which I said, slow your roll, Tina, I got to get through my own battle first. But then I come to find out that she's kind of having others know about the templates, and someone else who was in DV recovery with me said, you should build more. It should go beyond the evaluation. So while I still am a custody eval prep specialist, I created a whole set of templates and tools that we've been using in the court system over the past 10 years or so, to great success in cases where there is that violence, there is that coercive control, that psychological control and trauma, really. And so that's how it was born. And we decided to call it the Custody Blueprint after we couldn't come up with a name for it. And everyone on the team just kept calling it the Custody Blueprint for now. And then we were like, I think we have it. I think it's just the Custody Blueprint. Yeah.
I like it that it's blueprint, right? Because it shows that there's different levels, right? And different things that are a part of it. I found that there's 9 parts of the Custody Warrior Blueprint program. So I want to get into those 9, each one a little bit, so that we can get that out to the listeners. Let's start with number 1, the end game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So end game, the warrior's end game, refers to knowing what you are here for. When we talk to protective parents, a lot of them are coming in knowing that they want custody, and they have some ideas, some more specifics about it, but the truth is that they're not thinking about the whole picture, because why would they? They don't realize how much is going to still remain problematic, especially with the post-separation abuse. So we start focusing on different categories to make them understand at the end of the road, these are all the things that will be decided for you for the rest of your children's being a minor, unless you get into those specifics yourself. So we start to get them thinking about what that end game is, what it is that they are going after right off the bat, so that they can carry that with them as they go through perhaps unexpected ex parte orders, unexpected professional meetings.
So, and the next one, in number 2, is armor.
Yeah, the warrior's armor is essentially looking at mindset, and that's really 2-pronged. The first thing we're focusing on is how are you appearing in court? And the second thing we focus on is how are you describing your parenting? Now, the parenting piece is probably a lot easier. The protective parents that we're working with are just basically really good as parents. It's just that they may not be talking about it in that way. They may not be describing the authoritative parent that they are. So they may come off as permissive or authoritarian, more likely permissive with survivor parents. And so we like to help them figure out what is the truth about the way you parent, how can we plug that truth into the way the court needs to hear it. But the other prong is really the one that we're constantly working on throughout people's time with us. The entire time they're with us, we're working on that mindset piece, because usually when you're up against an abuser in court, they know you. So they know how to describe who you are, how you walk into the room, and make it sound like there's something wrong with it, that it points to mental instability, mental illness, alienation, causing anxiety in our children by having their own anxiety. And so being in the same room with your abuser when you're in court, when you're with professionals, where the two of you may be doing a joint session, it's easy to have that trauma be a very apparent layer that then unfortunately feeds into the narrative that your co-parent has about you. And so we work very hard on understanding that mindset, allowing the client to really figure out, how are you appearing? We can help with what we're seeing. How do you feel inside? And trying to match it up so that they can show themselves as the capable and fit parent that they are with their concerns when they come into court, instead of walking right into the abuser's narrative of them.
Well, and that's what the abuser is hoping for, right?
That's right. That's right. And very often it really happens, Liz, because again, you're in the room with your abuser. You're in a very, very high stakes situation. And the family court themselves are often not trained in deep trauma. And so it's hard to know who's telling the truth when you have a calm, well-possessed sort of parent there, and then you have someone who appears to be anxious, or some other part of the narrative that's coming from that charming abuser.
Well, especially if they're Jekyll and Hyde, right? In the public, right. they're seen as the good person. Behind the closed doors is where the monster is. So.
Yeah.
I know I've been through custody battles, so this is why I am really happy you are on my platform, because I went through a mess of custody battles where my ex-husband had custody of my children that were not in his care. They were in my care.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had to pay child support, and the kids were always in my care, never in his care. So the courts were all confused, right? So that's why when you reached out to me, Renee, I was just like, no, you have to come on. Like, we have to get this out there, because that's what the abuser is hoping for, is that we come in there all broken up and all our trauma is engaged, right? So we're very emotional, and then they're like, oh, well, she's mentally unstable because she's so emotional and stuff like that. So I really want to thank you for tonight.
Well, I'm glad you bring it up, because November is Family Court Awareness Month. And I think a lot of people see family court as a place where the parent who should be getting some sort of custody, or they should have the majority custody actually end up losing custody, in spite of the fact that they're the primary caregiver. And it's hard for people to understand that family court can award custody to the wrong parent, to the parent who doesn't know the children, doesn't know their favorite color, their best friends' names, their teachers' names.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So we're going to go on to number 3, adversity.
Yes, the warrior's adversary. And so here what we're looking at is we focus on 2 things. So we're looking at, what are your concerns about your co-parent? What is it that is going on with your co-parent? And how much of that might you have evidence for, do you think? So we start to explore the problems, what types of abuses that their co-parent has and is coming up with. And then the other thing we do is we work on allegations. So we have them also, clients also take a look at what are all of the allegations. And when we're looking at that, we're really deep diving into, the smear campaign, meaning what are they telling the friends, the family, the neighbors, the school, etc. How is it that they've been insinuating that you've been doing things in past emails, text messages, etc.? What are they writing in their motions? What are they clearly saying in their filings? What are they blatantly accusing you of when they message you or send you an OFW? So we're really looking at all the different ways that they have these allegations, where they're coming from, and take a look at every single one of them. And with concerns, when we're working with the clients, we are very careful. We really make sure to have different categories for them to think about, because I think when you think about, I'm leaving this abuser, I'm escaping this abuser, you've really got 2 or 3 things that are top of mind if you had to categorize them. But the reality is that some of those categories of how this abuser is abusing is not something the court cares about, interestingly enough. So we give them a set of categories that we want them to think about. And pretty much everyone we work with realizes that most of those categories, they do have some concerns about their co-parent about. And so sometimes when we're working with people, they discover that their strategy does not lie in what they thought it did. It actually lies, quite strategically in things that the court is going to care more about, that they don't realize that at the start.
Yeah. And number 4, our arsenal.
Yes, the warrior's arsenal. So that's a beast. And once people get to that part of the Custody Blueprint program, then we are working on the evidence. And so with that, we are taking a look at what they actually have. And it's kind of fascinating because now, much more so than even 2 years ago, the majority of what people have, it's still, text messages, emails, etc. But there is a lot of people who come in largely with recordings. So they might have recordings from a dash cam, a smoke alarm cam, a doorbell cam. They might have recordings that they've been taking on their phone. They might have recordings from sessions they've been in with their co-parent or with the teachers or with, a co-parent counselor or whatever, in places where they're allowed to record, where they can record. I think it's important for me to pause here and just note for everyone who's thinking I need to record more, it's crucial that you take a look at whether or not recording is legal in your state or province. And really what you're doing is you're putting in the name of your state or province, like Wyoming, for example. So you would put in Wyoming recording laws. And what's going to come up is one of three things. It's either going to be one party consent, two party consent, or all party consent. As long as it's two party consent or all party consent, some people argue that that's the same thing. It's not exactly the same thing, but both of them basically mean the same thing for protective parents, which is that you are not allowed to record without everybody's consent, right? If it's one party consent, then you still have to look closely and ask your lawyer, should you have one, but the chances are very high that you are able to record, but it has to be a conversation that you are part of. So one party consent means that one party in that conversation is recording without everyone else's knowledge. So if you're recording an exchange, for example, and you and your co-parent are talking, since you are part of the conversation, as long as it's a one-party consent state or province, you are then allowed to have that recording, to make that recording. And that's a lot of the evidence that we are seeing. So when we're going through that with clients, this is where it gets interesting, because people come in with mountains and mountains of evidence. At this point now, we're getting people with hundreds of recordings. And the truth is that most of those recordings we don't use. We're really just looking for one or two, maybe three that we can use, unless there are recordings of physical violence, which are very rare to be able to capture. But if those are captured, if you have 10 of them, if you have 30 of them, you use them all. But if you are looking at other things, then we're really looking for something in particular. And so we don't want to bring in a lot of recordings. But we're gathering evidence for either that custody evaluation or examination, whatever it may be, as well as court evidentiary hearings, trials, etc., so that people have that. And so we help people understand what's going to work, what's not going to work. And we even go through some of it with them to teach them how to continue to do that as they go along.
We had a question that came in while you were talking, Renee. They want to know where they can find the laws for the recording for global.
Yeah, very easy. You'll go to your browser. Most people use Google, so we'll just say that. You're going to go into Google and you're just going to ask it. You're going to put in your state or province name. So let's say California. You're going to put in California recording laws, and then you'll see what's going to come up. And again, it's either going to be one party, two party, or all party. You're looking to see that your state is a one party consent state. California is not, so that you can then be allowed to possibly record a conversation that you are part of. Chances are extremely high that you would be able to, but of course you always want to double check. It would be awful to, be bringing something in that you would hope to use that isn't admissible.
And the next question that this person's asking, is there too many recordings? Sometimes does that throw a lawyer off or the judge off if you bring in too many recordings?
I think it hurts most people's cases if they bring in too many. As mentioned, if there's physical abuse, I'm not against bringing it all in. I mean, really, if you have a lawyer, your lawyer will decide what to go with, and then whatever they reject, you can decide whether or not to fight for it. But before you fight for bringing it in, you have to ask your lawyer, I appreciate you being discerning. Can you explain to me why this doesn't work, just so that I know? And then that gives you room to say, okay, I shouldn't fight for this. Or, well, I'm explaining it badly. Let me explain it and see if that changes things, right? But when it comes to recording, look, on the internet, there's a lot of, it's exhausting to document. You shouldn't be documenting everything. It's exhausting. And there was a little bit of a trend where people stopped documenting. And then we saw our clients losing in court because they didn't have proof of something that did or did not happen. And so they're kind of like, again, I cannot say it enough. You do want to record everything. If you're in a custody battle, it is exhausting, and it is made more exhausting recently due to the need to be digitally recording so much, digitally capturing so much. It was exhausting enough when I did this over a decade ago, but now look, right? So I think that really you want to be documenting everything. And then what you're doing is you are really marking the ones where you think you might have something and making sure there's just dates on your other recordings. With these other recordings, what's crucial is that you actually put the date in the title, because if at any point you accidentally move it or anything like that, you might get confused. It might redate it because you've moved it to someplace else for storage purposes. And then you think that's the date that it was actually recorded when it wasn't. If you're using some things like Otter, OTTER, that's free to download. If you're using something like that, it dates it for you. You know, a lot of these things will date it for you. So whatever you're using, if it dates it for you, that's going to be worth a lot for you, because you're not going to be able to stop and date something every time you make a recording. You're really not. But the reason why you just want to leave the stuff alone where nothing happened, but you have the date there, is so that when they accuse you of grabbing, you know, a rock and throwing it at their, you know, car at exchange, and, you know, everybody heard it, the rock hit, that basically you're able to have a recording of it where you said, hello, sweetie, do you have your backpack? Great. Bye, guys. And we can hear your door closing. We can hear the ignition turn. We can hear you turn the music on. We can hear you driving away using your turn signal, right? So we now have proof, because you want to record before you go to the exchange. You want to keep recording after you go to the exchange. So yeah, it feels like a lot of useless recording, but it might be the thing where you get to say, that didn't happen on that date. Oh, well, it was a different date. I'm getting the dates confused. Your Honor, pick any date, and I'll provide it for you to show that this didn't happen, right? So yeah, you do want to pretty constantly be recording.
So Renee, let's get into the defense.
The warrior's defense, yes. So it's interesting because a lot of what we're seeing in court as well is comms, communication. And so we'll see these OFWs, we'll see text messages. And I'm just going to pause here and say, if you are texting with your ex, please, 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 please stop texting. Please stop texting. Please stop texting. It does not make for strong evidence. We use it. Please don't get me wrong. We're using it. But when people are able to move from text over to email, which sometimes is a little tricky, but when you are able to move over to email, your evidence appears to be less emotional when you talk or when you write. It tends to look like you're trying to collaborate, whereas text messaging, even when you're writing something in email format, will just psychologically have an emotional layer to it, as well as a lighter layer to it. Sometimes we do want to be lighter, but we want it to be over email. For the most part, we want the email to be very clear that you have a friendly business relationship, or at least a civil business relationship with your co-parent, right? And we have particular methods that we use within that. Gray rock hurts our clients, so we don't have our clients, we don't allow our protective parents to do gray rock in writing anymore. We also, as much as I loved it, we have found that yellow rock is also not working well in court. So when people sort of get on boards and that type of thing, they're finding things like gray rock and yellow rock, who, by the way, these things were brought up by people I support and send people to all the time. So it's nothing to do with the people who created gray rock and yellow rock. It's just that things time out and these things don't work anymore. Gray rock meaning, say almost nothing. Yellow rock meaning, be friendly, but, only say this, this, and this, and be firm. The firmness doesn't work well in court. So boundaries, as I like to tell our clients, no doesn't have to sound like no. It can sound like no, right? And so what we're doing is when we're working with people who are kind of like, I've got this, I'm really good at this, and we take a look at what we're writing, we're all kind of like, let's change a few things. And so we're teaching them to write in a way that, lately I've been using the term Pollyanna, where it's basically you're coming in and you're cheering, you're wonderful, and you're treating them like they're normal and giving them room to respond in a way that is not normal and that is contentious, right? And I think that the court seeing someone who's trying so hard to collaborate and sharing a little tidbit that in the end doesn't matter and you can't be attacked for and that type of thing puts our clients in a much better place. So we're really looking at each individual client and taking a look at their style, the way that their co-parent is in their co-parent style, and we're figuring out the exact way of writing back. Sometimes we have people start to lean a little bit into AI. AI is not ready yet. No matter, we've tried all of the platforms. We're not pleased with AI yet. It still gets our people in trouble, but we can say that it's a lot better than where a lot of our clients are starting out in the way that they're writing to their ex. So if you don't have a coach or anything like that, then do lean into AI, but don't just take it and run with it. You do still have to be extremely careful. You still have to edit. You still have to tweak because of the way things look. So the defense then is about writing in a way, knowing that all of these, and when I say OFW, I mean our Family Wizard, I'm talking about these parenting communication portals, excuse me, anything, or if you're writing over email, it's basically how are you writing, because all of this is likely to come into your court case. The evaluator, the guardian ad litem, the OCL, whoever it might be, are very likely to see at least some of your emails, right? So we help people clean up their emails. And what ends up happening, of course, is that then it's kind of like, well, how am I going to explain the fact that I was kind of not so great? And now I'm like, I sound very different. It doesn't sound like AI, but it does sound very, very different and like I'm being coached. First off, there's nothing wrong with saying, you know what? I realized that it wasn't sustainable for us to be writing this way. I didn't feel good about the way I was writing. I felt triggered when I was writing. And so I wanted to get something so that we could get to a place where we could really co-parent. And I feel like I'm doing that. It hasn't so much worked with my co-parent, but I'm feeling good about at least I'm putting stuff out there that I can now feel good about. So I've worked so hard to make sure that this co-parenting relationship is going to come along because it's all in writing and I want my writing to be good, right? So it's fairly easy to be able to say, I've changed my ways. I've done some research. I have a coach, whatever it is, all of these things are okay. And if anything, will show that you're doing the work to get past, the fact that, and as much as we can, we've been abused, we left, but we do have to spend the next so many years communicating with this person. And more importantly, for, our children's sake, for our child's sake, then, I really want this to be something where we are not cruel to each other, where we're not angry with each other. And so I'm doing my part. Right. And then the defense piece is what they write back, because when you write to them in a way that looks unaffected, they're going to do one of two things. Well, the first thing they're all going to do, which is that they're triggered by it. Absolutely. They don't like that you're not under their thumb, but some of them will show the triggering, others won't. And then they will start to mimic what you're doing. But that's still okay because they can't help themselves. Most of these people are narcissists, so there's still going to be colors of things. And
well, they eventually get caught. It might take months, it might take years, but they eventually do get caught because they can only spin so many spider webs, and then the spider web falls apart.
That's right.
I want to get into the custody evaluation. You mentioned it at the beginning, but let's talk about that for the people, the viewers out there that don't even know what custody evaluation is.
Yeah. Well, a custody evaluation will often come up as a possibility or will be mandated for a case that just isn't settling. This case just cannot be closed. The judges are really looking at having an expert who can really speak to a deep dive into the parents, into the children, into collaterals. Collaterals are basically people who can speak to what they've seen. Teachers, coaches, pediatricians, etc., right? Babysitters, etc. If an evaluation is coming up, first off, it's generally something that is incredibly expensive. And it tends to, if you're doing a full custody evaluation, because now there are different kinds that are coming up, not many, but a full custody evaluation, which is the most common thing that's still being done, is going to be about 3 to 6 months is what they'll quote you. It's more likely to be 6 months to a year. There's a lot I can talk about here, that is a little bit sort of ancillary in a way. For example, the longer that the evaluation goes on, the more of a status quo you're creating, which if you have full custody works well for you. But if you're doing a temporary, and temporary is always permanent, so you shouldn't agree to 50-50 if that's not what the kids are used to, right? But whatever is in place when your case starts, and whatever changes you make, it can easily become a status quo. And the longer that evaluation goes on, the more of a status quo you've got. And then even the evaluator may not want to upset that status quo, right, for the children. But an evaluation is basically going to consist of several interviews that are done with you. Several interviews are done with your intern, with your co-parent. So they'll meet with you, meet with co-parent, you, co-parent, you, co-parent. There is likely to be a home visit so that they can observe you with the kids. Same thing on the other side. There may be the children visiting the evaluator in their office. That's a possibility. You'll be giving your body of evidence to the evaluator. And many people argue that this is the person who should get all of the stuff that they need. Unfortunately, when people hear all of the stuff they need, they hear everything you've got, which is not at all true. And so that's part of the work we do, which is to say this really needs to be a work of art. And so the body of evidence for an evaluation is one of the hardest things that I think we work on to put together, because we have to feel good about every comma. We have to feel good about everything that's included. And therein, again, that's where the custody blueprint started. That's where my template started, that Tina had said, wow, this just lays it out, doesn't it? Very clearly. So that's what we're using. There's a couple of new pieces that I have designed since then that have worked beautifully. And so that we're coming, there are some clients who come to us basically who are kind of like, I'm looking at them thinking, I don't know how we're going to do this. And they do end up getting it because that body of evidence is something that they spent the time on, that we put together, right? And so over the course of this, and each one of these meetings are usually an hour, but sometimes several hours. I tend to like it when there's several hours rather than 1 hour at a time. There's also psychological testing. There's a lot of controversy around the psychological testing. The MMPI 2 or 3 is usually what's used, right? Which is a test that is brilliantly designed and is now used for custody evaluations as well. So there's that. And that's, as you can tell, a whole different discussion to be had. But then you just don't know. You just don't know what the evaluator is going to pull out. There's personality tests, there's parenting tests, and there's controversy around every one of these tests. Should they be used in a custody situation, or aren't they supposed to just be used clinically? Is this a real thing and does it work? Is this biased? A lot of these tests are biased toward a middle-class white male. And so it gets tricky, right? With the MMPI, which many evaluators, that may be the only thing that they'll use, then what they're doing is they're looking at the results, right? And so it's usually spit out by the system, that type of thing. But often, the trauma victim is basically going to show up as possibly paranoid or overly anxious. And it's kind of like, yeah, it's very situational, right? This whole thing is very situational. And then oftentimes the abuser will come off as deceitful. But what's interesting, and this is why the body of evidence is so crucial. What's interesting about those tests is how often the test itself has shown that this person is deceptive, and they will actually say that's just because they're protecting themselves in a custody battle. But then the protective parent, usually the mother, I'm going to say, that's showing up anxious and paranoid, is seen as having a personality disorder. And it's not the test that's saying that, it's the interpreter. And so it becomes really problematic from my viewpoint of how often I see that they're just, the interpretation is just not getting it right. And this is what ends up in these reports. And the reports can be anywhere from 20, 25 pages, which is, a little short, but okay. I just got one that was 150 pages for a client, which I've never seen one that long, but often they're right around 60 to 85 pages or so is what I most frequently see, where they are writing up this entire process, handing it to the court. And at the end of it is a recommendation for custody award. What should it look like? What should these parents be doing? And I want to pause here and I want to say one of the most difficult things for parents who have gone through it is reading that, because they will criticize both parents, including the protective parent. And I have to remind clients, look, if they don't criticize you, if they don't have something to say, at the very least, they may have criticism where it's like, look, I need them to kind of do this, that, and the other thing would be helpful as a parent. But there are many evaluators talk about the fact that if they don't criticize even the healthier parent, they will be seen as biased.
Yep.
So then the whole report gets thrown out when it was in favor of the healthier parent, of the protective parent who knows these children. And so we don't know why things come out the way they do, but it's just a very hard read for a protective parent who is just stabbed in the heart by every critical thing they read about themselves, wondering if this is the thing that is going to derail their attempt to protect their children.
Well, and there's a difference between a regular custody battle and a narcissistic custody battle as well, correct?
So that's an interesting thing. I'm glad you bring that up. So it is actually 95% of divorcing parents never see the inside of a courtroom. They figure it out, maybe with the help with lawyers, maybe sitting at the kitchen table, but they figure it out. 5% end up in court. Now, let's take that group, that 5% group. Of that group, we know that 75% and people, those are the latest statistics, which are always, statistics are hard. So it's a little bit older, but there are a lot of people who are in the field now who say it's definitely higher than that. But let's just go with the most recent statistic we know, which is that 75% of cases that go into court have an abuser. So they're in court because there is a parent who is insisting on revenge, a vendetta. I'm going to make you pay for seeing through me. I'm going to make you pay for leaving me. I'm going to make you pay for embarrassing me, fill in the blank, right? And so it becomes this protracted battle that just lasts forever and ever until somebody is bankrupted, really, right? Or hopefully we can end it sooner. And so it's really, if you're in court, 75% of that are going to be, you've got the abuser, you've got the narcissist. The other 25% tend to be made up of, maybe both the parents are the problem, but they tend to be more extreme cases where there might be imprisonment or drug use or something where the children are really endangered and they're really just trying to figure out how to protect the children.
Yeah, because I seen something that you put up today about, and I wanted to talk to you about that, is the private judge.
Oh, yes. So that's another thing. So there are some new, the court system is so inundated, right? It's like, you're saying, but only 5%. And yet that number is just, it's huge. It's huge. The court systems cannot handle these things. And so a couple of the newer things, the private judge is definitely probably the newest thing to really kind of start getting out there, right? But collaborative divorce is something that we're trying. I'm not a fan of collaborative divorce when there is domestic violence, because collaborative divorce means that you're sitting down and you really are figuring it out with the help of lawyers. You may promise not to litigate, but as a result, you're also promising to just agree. And I have never, not once, not yet, seen a collaborative divorce where the abuser shared all of their financials, and yet the healthier parent and the one who, by the way, 99% of abused parents, of abused people, have also been financially abused. So now you've got this disadvantaged, healthier, protective parent who is being forced into a collaborative process where they're not really going to force the other parent to show all of their financials. And so they're trying to negotiate something when that protective parent knows that there's a lot of hidden money, right? There's a lot of money that's not being declared. Sometimes these abusers will even walk in without any financial papers and just throw out a number. But because it's collaborative divorce, people do try to get them to bring it, but ultimately they don't. The private judge then is basically saying, hey, you're a judge, you're able to sort of adjudicate this. Can you please just help us out? And so they're basically going through sort of like a collaborative divorce process in a way, in that there's these meetings, that type of thing. And it depends on that private judge as to how that looks. So it's an interesting thing that I've been keeping an eye on. And yes, we wanted to put it out there so that people are aware that that's a thing.
See, I do pay attention, and I seen that. I was like, I've never heard of a private judge. So I was like no, tonight is a perfect time to get this out there and ask Renee, what is a private judge? Because I've never heard of it myself, because I was really curious. Is it similar to like a mediator?
Yeah, except this person can make decisions. And I think, with private judges, from what we can see so far, it seems to be for people who are quite wealthy.
Of course.
Yeah. So,
And,
so
and something that you mentioned is a lot of abusers will use the financial against the other parent, right? They breaking them down emotionally, mentally, physically, and now they're breaking them down financially. And the courts will often look at who has the better income without even considering the condition of the children in care.
So I don't know that I've seen a lot of that. It's the income doesn't come into it quite so much in terms of custody determinations, unless there's someone who just doesn't have an income at all and therefore doesn't have a place for the children to live, or cannot be assured that they can feed the child, clothe them, get them the books and toys that they need, pay for their field trips and lunches and etc. But usually the way that money is wielded as a weapon is through being litigious. So there will be ex parte motions constantly. There will be a motion here, a motion there. A lot of the protective parents that we're working with, we're preparing them for court about every 2 to 3 months. And there are even some districts and territories that everyone's jurisdiction is different. Sometimes people come to us and say, this is what we do in my state. It's kind of like, I'm not worried about your state. There's only so much knowing about your state's going to give you something. Let's find out more about your jurisdiction, right? Because the interesting thing is people will say, do you work here in Canada? Do you work here in Australia? It's kind of like, as a matter of fact, we work in, right now we're in 5 different countries in the world, as a matter of fact, right? And they're all coming to the same law conferences. They're all attending the same, webinars and conferences, wherever it may be, Oslo or wherever. And so it really is kind of the same. The laws are going to be different, of course, but the preparation that we do with you, the way that we're getting you in there to have the judge see what they need to see, that doesn't change. But when we ask people to look at their jurisdictions, we're looking at them to say, find out, if you have a lawyer, what does your lawyer know about this judge? What is this judge's sensibilities, right? What is their philosophy on this, that, and the other thing? How do they tend to generally rule? Because as somebody who has a strategy background, those things are going to be important for me as a strategist to figure out. Right. Lawyers come in and they're very tactical about it. The more they know about the judge, the better. But what I'm building is an overarching strategy, so that instead of these protective parents scrambling every time something unexpected happens, they pivot. They're like, yep, something unexpected was going to happen. I predicted this exact thing, or I didn't know it was going to be that. But now we move to the next thing we were going to do anyway, versus scrambling, finding that they're stipulating in the hallways of a courtroom, which is disastrous. There are just various things that can happen. And so it's important to know the jurisdiction. It's important to be aware of what's going on there.
So Renee, do you work with mothers only?
We don't work with mothers only, but I'm going to be honest with you. We work largely with mothers. We figured out that this is my theory anyway, having done this for as long as I have. I think it's, you can get statistics from anywhere. If we pick the most neutral place, which is just the statistics on violence with the federal justice system, if we just did that, it also echoes statistics from every other organization, which is to say that 85% of domestic violence victims are women, right? They're women. And of the 15% who are male, 49% of them have a male perpetrator. It is their male partner who is their abuser, and 48% it is their female partner who is the perpetrator. So can women abuse? Yes, about this much of the time, right? And of course, I know it's going to be all kinds of people surging and saying,
I'm going to get it all back.
You're going to get it all back. But the thing of it is who's responding to us as we put out there that we work with both men and women? It's largely women. The statistics are the piece. And then the other piece I think it is that when you are abused as a male, if you are abused by a female, do you really want to go to a female for help, right? When we're helping women, they're very triggered by males for a while. It's hard for them to trust their judgment about males, for some of them about anybody, right? And so the same is true of men. The same is true of males. So yes, we have male clients. We have plenty of male clients right now, right? But it echoes the percentage, right? And like our makeup actually echoes the percentage of the statistics that are out there, which I do find interesting. Yeah.
Well, I'm happy that you're putting those numbers out there, and for my male listeners out there, I try to get both perspectives out there. And
yes, yeah,
I'm like you, Renee. Like if I was a male, I wouldn't want to go to a female if I was being abused by a female for help. I would want a
Yeah.
male. Same as a female doesn't want to go to a male lawyer or male support coaching
Right.
when she's being abused by me. That is just the way it is.
It's trauma. Yeah, it is that trauma. We don't know what our trauma is going to do or what it's going to look like. And is that trauma going to make you need to sort of fold into, just who you are and your gender? And that, so we don't know, but I'm very understanding of it. It makes sense.
We had a question that came in, and the question is, what are the most common injustice you see mothers and children facing in custody battles today?
It's funny. I know the thing was most common. For some reason, what jumped into my head were false arrests. But provoke and record really comes into my head. I think the biggest injustice actually would be the 50-50 thing. I think that abuse is not believed. Women are more often painted as alienators, which, excuse me, is very, very problematic in court. But there's this 50-50 belief that children do very, very well when they spend as much time as possible with mom and dad, or mom and mom, dad and dad. And the thing of it is that a lot, when this first started, we were pulling from these statistics from these studies. And I went back and I read the studies because I'm that person. I'm that person where when somebody says something, I'm all kind of like, oh, that's interesting. Let me read the whole thing. I do have a psych background, so that's part of it. But I read these studies, and pretty much every one of them have just one sentence, one little something. And it's not even written as a disclaimer. It's just written as a fact in the middle of these things. One of them is on page 28. I'll never forget that, where it says, this does not hold true if there is abuse or contention between the parents. And so it's kind of like, well, then 50-50 has zero place in the court system, right? If you've got a contentious court battle that isn't solved quickly, then 50-50 is not something that works. But then you have MHPs, mental health professionals, psychologists, and people who understand children, study children, who many of them will say, look, it's great for them to spend time with both parents. But the truth of the matter is that these children are going to do best with what they're used to. You do have a primary attachment figure. You can have more than one, but you do have a primary attachment figure, right? To rip them from them for half of their lives. I mean, I would challenge anybody out there who has a really wonderful, loving marriage. You've been married for like 40 years or whatnot. And now, sorry, you don't get to see them for half of your time, half of your life, right? I think the best thing for children is what they are used to. That's what the parenting plan should be afterwards. So you're really studying, and this is something I'm doing with my clients, is how much did your co-parent spend with the children? A frequent response we'll get is they'd go on bike rides, or he'd take them to the arcade on the weekends for a couple hours, for 3 or 4 hours. This is somebody who does well with his or her kids when they have them for a half day on the weekends. But you try to suggest that to somebody in a custody battle and they lose it, right? When it's kind of like, well, what are you going to do with these kids beyond that?
Yeah.
And a lot of them say, well, this is, I was their primary caregiver anyway. And they act like they're going to spend all this time with the kids. But then we come to find that when the children are over there, they report that they're sat in front of a TV, that they're left alone, that the girlfriend or the abuser's mom is taking care of these kids. So it's not so much about having the kids. It's about, any number of things for them, right? The revenge thing, the wanting to look like a great parent thing, whatever it might be, fill in the blank, right? So the better things for these kids is to not also have to pack their suitcase halfway through the week, or the week on, week off, which is a horrendous thing to do to a person. So what I like to say is, you're an adult. I mean, hey, Liz, you're a grown-up, right? I'm going to ask you to pack your bags every Wednesday and every Saturday and move from here to there and just live there for a few days. Tell me, how's your work going to go? How are your friendships going to go? How's your sleep going to be?
Well, the first 2 days you're adjusting. At least the first 48 hours you're adjusting, and then you get comfortable, and then you readjust, and then you readjust, and then you readjust. You have no time of balance.
There's no time. Meanwhile, and I'm talking to you as an adult, you're telling me how you would do. Imagine if your brain isn't fully formed yet and your prefrontal cortex, where security lives, is not formed yet. Imagine that. And that's what we're doing to these children in the name of as much time as possible with each parent, when the abusive parent couldn't be bothered with the kids behind closed doors. But now they want what's owed to them. And it's these children's lives, right? You have to dedicate half of your life to just being in my home. Doesn't matter if I'm there. Doesn't matter if I'm paying attention. As long as you're here and you're not with the person I'm seeking revenge on. For many of them, that's what they're thinking.
Well, that's it, right? The revenge. It's not even about the children most of the time. It's about the revenge on the partner.
Yeah.
And they don't bring that up in courts, because in the courts, it's the children, but they're not actually seeing that it's a revengeful activity that's being done to the other partner. Yeah. It gets to the point where it wastes a lot of the court's time and a lot of energy in the parent that already knows the outcome, right? Right. And I like that you put that the jurisdictions, because there's different laws and different rules in each community and country and that, but the jurisdiction, you'll know what the lawyers are going to do, what the judges are going to do, and then you have that you can prepare yourself, right? Get that preparation going. Yeah. There was 3 things that we didn't get into, and Renee has to skip out soon, so I really want to get them on there. But check out your website. So Renee, get the website out there so people can check out these custody warrior blueprint program, how they can get involved with you and all of that good stuff. I want to get all of that good stuff out before you have to jump out.
Okay. You want me to jump into that now? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So the Custody Warriors Blueprint Program is the main way that people go through. They basically spend 9 weeks with us going through, and I know you and I talked about 5 of the 9 things that we go through, or 6, excuse me, because we did get 2 evaluations. In order to really, what we're doing is we're helping these clients to prepare their cases, to partner better with their lawyers, give their lawyers the right stuff, and spend far less. We did some... we actually ended up doing some data and really studying some numbers. And we found across the board that we were saving our clients 78% of their legal fees. So it was a no-brainer for us to teach them how to partner with the lawyers and what to bring them and what not to. And we're never taking the place of lawyers. So what we're really doing is we're helping them put together all of the yeses and maybes and helping them let go of the no's and to stop bothering their lawyers so much. And expecting so much back. So that's the program where we go through all the pieces of the custody blueprint. We also offer, we do have memberships. We do have people who just want to have us by their side throughout their whole custody battle. And so that is something that we do offer as well. We do private sessions. What I'm really proud of on top of the Custody Warriors Blueprint program is Pro Se Clinic. I love Pro Se Clinic because not everyone can afford to get, when people are working with us in the Blueprint program, in the Custody Warriors Blueprint program, they basically have a team of like 7 experts working on their case, which is crazy, right? And probably contributes to our success rate. They've got like all of my coaches on my team. They've got a level 3 IFS practitioner, Achra Tarfa, who is just amazing, right? We've got a lawyer who does pro bono work with us, Anna, who is actually a trauma-informed lawyer and loves to talk about, what they're doing with the lawyers. So that's absolutely the best way to work with us, but not everybody can afford that. And so I built Pro Se Clinic after spending about 2.5 years trying to figure out how can I have this blueprint, at least some pieces of it that can work without the side coaching, without having someone who keeps going back and forth with each template, each piece until it's ready, until it's gold, until we know it's going to be good. Can we at least offer something better for people who cannot even afford a lawyer? So Pro Se Clinic is something that about a year ago we brought in, and I'm really proud of that for people who are economically challenged so that they can come in and they can still have those touch points with us since they're going pro se, meaning self-represented. Then obviously they're doing everything themselves, but can't they at least have touch points with my team, right? And with me, a chance to at least have us take a quick look at what they're doing and set them right. So that's basically, what we do and the way that we offer things. We're really, really proud of what we do. It's definitely really hard work, but everyone on my team, their heart is so deeply in with these clients. We all know these clients. We know their stories. No matter how many, we've got, if our program is full, we still know every one of them. With Pro Se Clinic, obviously the capacity there is higher, but we still have a sense of these people's cases. It's crazy how much my team will bend over backwards for these protective parents, right?
And Renee, can you get the website out and spell it for the audio listeners out there as well?
Yeah, so you can go to thecustodyblueprint.com, or if you want to go straight there, where that's going to send you is to bestfootforwardllc.com. So that's bestfootforwardllc.com, bestfootforwardllc.com. And if you wanted to just jump straight to Prostate Clinic, you can go to prostateclinic.net, which is spelled PROSE for prostate, clinic, CLINIC.net, NET, and you can take a look at Prostate Clinic for people who are economically challenged, but still, want to get a leg up in their custody case. That's again, I think the reason Prostate Clinic is something that I just love so deeply is because when we looked at the stats, people who go in prostate have a 20% chance of winning. And if their co-parent also goes in prostate, the most that they've got is a 50% chance. And I spent a long time studying why that was. And it really did boil down to the fact that people were just not putting their cases together well. And I was kind of like, we can solve this. And so you can see my passion is both with, the Blueprint program and the Prostate Clinic for people who need it. But that's really the work that we are doing, that my team is doing, that we can offer to people. Right.
And we had a question that came in while you're talking, Renee. What 5 countries are you working in?
US, Canada, Singapore, UK, and Australia.
Oh, well, look at you, Singapore. I would have never guessed Singapore.
The expats. Singapore is a very interesting place to work in. They have a process that I actually kind of like. Yeah. And they've got some really well-informed people there, but our work is still needed there, even so. And people need to understand how to package, as it were, if I can be a little bit, sort of, I can sometimes be a little jocular, but how to basically put that trauma forth, how they can understand what the DV was like and what's going to come out of it. And Australia is such a interesting place to go as well, because they really have strong groups on both sides trying to inform and influence the court, between groups who are just about punishing the other parent, as well as groups that are about talking about alienation, talking about coercive control. So it's a very interesting place to work as well. Yeah.
And the last question I have for you tonight is, if you could speak directly to a lawmaker or judges, what would your one message be to them?
Not something they want to hear. My message would be, it's going to make me very unpopular. As someone who is a 2-year certified, and I continue to get more certificates in all the different kinds of domestic violence, I feel like if you're going to work in family court, you should be required to get a long form, like a certificate, like become a certified DV advocate, so that you are really hearing the statistics and you're learning the psychology and the philosophies and the history of, how the patriarchy may have contributed or not, and just and the immigration and how that matters, and how men are abused, how women are abused, all of it. I mean, there's a point where you don't know anything until you've really heard it, even if you've experienced it. It's very, very strange to say that. And then the other thing I would say is, if you can, go to the Strangulation Prevention Institute in San Diego, and just understand that someone who, trigger warning, of course, but I know you already gave one, but someone who chokes, in other words, strangles, basically someone who is probably homicidal. So it would be great if I stopped hearing freaking judges say, well, there were no marks. So, and if you get certified in that, if you take their program, you understand why there are no marks very frequently, and what marks could look like versus what they should look like. I know I went on, and there's one.
I am glad that you got that out there, because, it's not always a mark that's going to show the truth. We really got to stop with there was no marks. There was no, there was no scar left behind. We really got to stop that. So thank you for getting that out there, Renee. Thank you for joining me on Teatime. I'm just going to do a wrap up, and I really appreciate this, and stay in contact, because I do want to know more about these laws and the Blueprint and that as well. So tonight, as we close tonight's tea time, I want to extend deep gratitude to Renee for bringing her truth, wisdom, and unwavering courage to the table. Her work through the custody blueprint reminds us that even in the hardest chapters of our life, we can rebuild with grace, with patience, and with purpose. Renee's voice stands as a beacon for parents everywhere who feel unseen or unheard, showing that awareness, education, and empathy truly can change the system and hearts one story at a time. To all you tuning in tonight, thank you for sharing your evening cup with us. Remember, no matter how broken a story may seem, it can still be rewritten into something beautiful. Catch all the replays across Miss Liz's platforms, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and keep pouring your TEA and TEE, teaching educational awareness, into every part of your life. And I'll see you guys same time, same place, and we'll do this all over again.